Meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Director Hayes, would you please read the board priorities?
Yes, I'll be happy to. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students: provide leadership and directions to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. The district and support action programs and activities which reduce the impact of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you. Director Klandron, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
Mission statement: enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you. Up next, we have a presentation on youth leadership teams. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you very much. Giving our presentation tonight is Lisa Baxter, our Program Director of School Climate Transformation. So Lisa, thank you so much for coming today and give us an update on our youth leadership teams.
All right, thank you. So Superintendent Schneckloff asked me to limit this to about 10 minutes, so I'm going to just give a very brief overview. And Brenda, thank you. You can move to the next slide. So last year, as you know, we started a commitment to ensuring that all students in Davenport schools feel safe, engaged, and connected in our schools. And that is our mission statement for our social, emotional, behavioral health. And through our crisis response violence prevention work, which we started last year and continued into this year, and now moving squarely into Pbis, our professional development has focused on these things, and the staff in Davenport schools are all striving to achieve this goal. So adding student voice into this process is another important layer to our work, to ensure that the adults in our school know what students need to be and feel safe at school, right? Because schools are for students. We serve our students. They don't serve us. Thanks, Brenda. So why youth leadership teams? Well, students have powerful voices. And by having students on teams, they are available to provide insights representing all of them, all of their students. Our youth leadership teams are important because they have input on improving the learning environment, and again, that impacts all kids. And youth leadership teams really equal engagement. So when kids get involved in the things that are happening in this school, that's high engagement. So last year we kicked this off and we started our youth leadership teams. They met twice in April and May last year. And the standard size at the secondary level is to have about 10 to 15-ish students on the team, one at each building. And the youth leadership teams are slightly smaller at the elementary with approximately 5 to 10 students. We want youth leadership teams to reflect the diversity of our student population, and it's especially important to include students that have experienced some of the negative aspects that are noted on the conditions of learning. A couple weeks ago, we reviewed the condition of learning, and students could score relative to how they feel related to student-to-student relationships, adult-to-student relationships. So we also want some students who maybe don't have strong student-to-student relationships, or maybe feel they don't have one trusted adult they can go to, because that voice is also important to figuring out what we need in our schools. This is the 4-step challenge-based model that we taught facilitators last year to engage our youth leadership teams. So the first step is to engage, discover something that they want to change. What are we going to work on? What is the big idea? What is our challenge here? Then teams investigate that problem or that idea. They come up with guiding questions and create action plans. And then an important part of that process is to reflect on your work, and while using data, of course, to do that. So on a couple weeks ago, we had our first facilitator training for the year. And these were our 4 learning targets. We wanted to get facilitators together to be able to share their current actions of their teams. We wanted to walk our facilitators through the conditions for learning survey as well. We wanted to teach them how to use that data to inform what's happening in their youth leadership teams. And we wanted to provide a necessary time for the facilitators to network with each other. We started then with the facilitators creating a poster, either pictures or words, whatever they wanted to do, to demonstrate what they were currently doing with their leadership teams. And on the south side of the room here, I hung those posters. So I invite the board to get your eyes on that when you have a break or after the meeting. Now, full disclosure, the facilitators did not know I would be hanging these up in the board meeting tonight. But anyway, they worked as facilitators, and our facilitators range from 1 to up to 4 facilitators in the building. It's really a building choice. But those were their posters. And on the next slide, I just highlighted 3 of them. So I chose Washington School, and Washington School is focusing on the student-to-student construct, and their focus area is at recess and on the playground. And you can see some of the actions that they noted on that. They're making signs that they're posting. They're coming up with strategies to improve that environment, and they're looking at their referral data to help guide their work. Smart Junior High is focusing on relationships, both student-to-student relationships and adult-to-student relationships. And they have spent a good amount of time getting their team together and building community, and have got that off to the ground with a big focus on that. And then I also have West High School's poster up there, and you can see their goals. They've solidified their team. They're working to develop community. They're looking at lots of different things related to safety. And they're coming up with actions that could inform their MVP, Mentors in Violence Prevention Program. So they're looking at ways to connect to other things that are already happening in core instruction for all students. So why should youth leadership teams be looking at conditions for learning data anyway? Well, students provide us very important feedback to help us better understand the results. This is the way they answered, and they help us, answer those questions of why did our students score this way? Students can offer unique strategies for improving our scores and can serve as powerful advocates to ensure that kids take the survey and give, their authentic input on the survey and help communicate that, hey, the teachers are looking at this. This is a way to have your voice communicated through this survey. High-functioning teams can make significant contributions to influencing different aspects in school based on their action plans. And of course, we know students are powerful change agents and can add to that collection, analysis, and that communication of the data. So the next part of our training, we trained our facilitators in that same data analysis model that we did with the board, that 3 rounds, and we modeled it using our district data, which I want to note, not only did the board go through that, but our teachers just went through that today. Our youth leadership teams will be doing that at their next meeting as well. So we modeled it with our district data, and then for our youth leadership team facilitators, they are using the building data with the kids. And the data is a little different. It shows how they scored on each construct, but it also has each question listed on it and how students scored relative to each question, which is pretty interesting when you get to look at that for your building. So that was the process that we modeled and we want our facilitators to do with their students. So the other connection we wanted facilitators leaving is once they do that process with their kids, we want them to consider that data and have students reflect on how does this data that we just looked at support the work of our teams? Is there anything we might change based on this plan or based on this data? And or could this data drive some next steps for our teams? So if teams, at Washington School are working on student-to-student relationships at recess, we want them to continue that good work, but maybe expectations and boundaries came up as an area of concern. How can they bring expectations and boundaries into that work at recess? So just giving the teams another piece of data to help inform their work. And then this last slide is just a slide I pulled right out of the training, and we want our facilitators to meet at least monthly with their teams. They're keeping an agenda, and kids and the facilitators each have assigned roles. It's really important to build community at every meeting with an icebreaker or other activities to do that, to continue to use data to drive decisions, to use that CFL to inform actions, and to connect those actions to core, or things that are happening in universal instruction, because that's what benefits all kids. And then we left them with that assignment to review the CFL data with their students. After the students do that, they will also provide input, the youth leadership team members, on our priority district construct, just like teachers are doing also. And then we plan to continue 2 more trainings of support for facilitators throughout the year and forevermore moving on as we get deeper and deeper into this work with youth leadership teams. So that is your very brief overview.
Thank you, Lisa.
Are there any questions? Director Beck.
First of all, I want to say thank you for presenting that tonight. I appreciate it. I think we all do. So I did notice that one of the requirements for the makeup of the leadership teams, I just want to make sure I'm interpreting it right, is that it includes students who may have responded negatively on that conditions for learning survey. So these are students who aren't your typical students that we see on committees and teams and things like that.
Correct. We don't want the kids to look all the same on these teams. We want very diverse kids. We want kids with different viewpoints and with different voice so that we can come up with actions that will have a big impact on our student bodies. So yes, we've made big effort to make sure that our teams are diverse and that would have kids that are able to give different perspectives to adults.
Awesome. And then a follow-up to that. So with the students, what type of continuity do they have? So I'm guessing some students may be on this for multiple years.
Yeah, we're still kind of playing with that. Last spring, we barely got started, and we rolled over the majority of those kids, and then, like at the elementary, brought on a new one. But going forward, we'll have to decide if we want to have a fraction of the team remain the same, or if each year do we just want, new input. So we haven't landed on how that would look quite yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? How many students do you have on each team? Is there like a set amount for each school or something? How many students do you have, I apologize, on each team at each school? Is it a set amount? Some schools have more than others, or?
Yeah. Whoop. Yeah, so the guideline at the secondary level is 10 to 15, but I mean, we're letting administrators work with their facilitators on those exact numbers. And then it is slightly lower, 5 to 10 is the guideline. But, we're pretty open to going with what the facilitators or principal thinks is a workable group for that work.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for the presentation. We appreciate it.
That concludes our presentation. Lisa, thank you so much for coming today. Lisa, thank you so much for coming and sharing where we are with our youth leadership teams. Very important process in Davenport schools for disaggregating our data and making sure that we're cascading all the way through our system. So thank you for allowing us to come and present that.
Thank you for the presentation. Moving on. Board reports. Are there any board reports? Director Klein Jerome.
First of all, I'd like to thank Trudy Thompson at Garfield for allowing me to sit in on her 95% lesson. I found it very interesting, and she did a great job, and so did the students in that classroom. I also attended the West High Orchestra concert, the Masquerade concert. It was great music, and it was fun to see the students in costumes. I attended the band spectacular at Brady Street. It was excellent. High school as well as the junior highs. And the student from West High who played upside down while his buddy held him upside down underneath the drums, you were very entertaining, I have to say. And I'd also like to encourage people, Central High is performing Dracula this week. I think it's Thursday and Friday. And North is doing Clue. And I hope people go out and support the drama departments in these two schools.
Director Poston.
I also attended the band spectacular, and I thought it was pretty impressive when you see 650 students from our district all out on the field at one time, and so it was a fantastic turnout. The west side of the stadium was filled and very impressive. I'd also like to thank Mrs. Panak at Madison School. Visited her kindergarten class and got to see the new literacy program in action, and also got to step into a few other classrooms that morning. So I appreciate the staff taking the time.
Director Beck.
I also was able to visit a classroom this past week. I went to Mrs. Potts' classroom in third grade room at Washington Elementary, and it was wonderful to be able to see some of what we talk about in action. And then Tammy Conrad gave me a great tour of the building. So that was a really wonderful experience, and thank you to all the staff and teachers that allowed that to happen. I also attended the Central High Masquerade or orchestra concert, and there was a masquerade component to that as well. I must say it is interesting to see kids performing in lots of different costumes, but it was an excellent performance. They had junior high and high school performers.
Director Hayes.
I attended a couple of the 95% trainings at Fillmore, and it was interesting to watch the kids participate in that. And we were kind of wondering what happens if someone wasn't totally engaged, and we got to see that in action. And I was liking the fact where when they did good, one of the teachers told them to kiss their brain, and they would, kind of mimic that. I went to both of the school board forums, which were both nice, one here and one at the Eastern Avenue Public Library. And I'd also like to thank McDonald's Corporation for the week of October 11th through 15th. They recognized educators, and they were able to come in and have breakfast that week on McDonald's. So again, thank you to McDonald's for doing that.
I too visited first and third grade at Fillmore. Thank you to that staff for letting us do that. I also went to Hayes and did a 3rd grade class there as well, which I think we're going to talk more about that later in the literacy discussion. Any other board reports? Seeing none, we will move on to communications. Open forum. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak, please fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The form is available in hard copy for in-person attendees or on the school board page of the district's website for those who want to participate virtually. Virtual participants must email their request to Brenda T. at tbrin@davenportschools.org by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. Iowa Open Meetings laws prohibit action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president may set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak. The board asks that no charge or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. Do we have any virtual? No? All right, we will do 2 minutes apiece. I believe we have a timer. Up first, I have Lindsey Hines, and then Jackson Hines, and Amanda Reinert, and Joe Reinert, and Olivia Reinert. Now I'll have them go, and then I'll list the other ones that are going. When you come up to the mic, please state your name and address for the record.
Okay. Lindsey Hines, 112 Prairie Hill Road, Bluegrass, Iowa. I'm a born and raised Davenport alum. I'm here with my husband, my parents, all Davenport alums. We're invested in our schools and our son's education. As Director Poshen had mentioned in a previous meeting, we need to be involved in our children's schools. PTA, band boosters, sports boosters. I am. This is my second year on the PTA. I help out with things like Popcorn Friday, Picture Day, Planning Fun Night. However, according to Director Beck, us parents are the problem. She states that children follow the rules and are resilient. But you know what? I'm so sick and tired of hearing how resilient kids are when speaking about how they've handled COVID. In talking with our pediatrician about the effects of COVID on children, they said that they've had more kids in their practice with mental health concerns than actual COVID symptoms. Kids are definitely paying the price for their resiliency. My child will be okay. I'm blessed enough to be at home and we can work on foundation educational skills, but not all kids have that. Not all children have homes that foster and nurture their education. What about those kids? Will you still say that they're resilient when they don't know how to read properly because their education thus far has been in a Google Classroom or in person with a mask? Then, since they can't read well, they fall farther and farther behind, slipping through the cracks, acting out, getting in trouble at school, being labeled as troubled children. Are those kids still resilient? I've seen the literacy stats for tonight's meeting, and they're so sad. But since I'm the problem, I'll let my son advocate for himself as he wanted to, because he was inspired by the 10-year-old boy from last month's meeting.
Masks make it. Jackson Hines, Bluegrass, Iowa. Masks make it hard to breathe, learn, speak, understand, and be understood, and know if someone is happy or mad with me. And masks are hot and sweaty.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Amanda Reinert, Joe Reinert, and Olivia Reinert.
Amanda Reinhardt, 320 Valley Ridge Road, Bluegrass, Iowa. I watched both forums hosted by KWQC. I took notes on the important, sometimes terrifying things that all of the candidates said, and after watching these forums, I can say with confidence that Ms. Beck and Mr. Potts are likely the lesser of two evils when considering the 4 candidates that were presented in these forums. Luckily, those are not our only options, and we have 2 other wonderful candidates with Hannah Doyle and James Quinn, 2 candidates that will consider what is best for all students and not just the few. With that, I would like to mention a few of the statements made by the candidates that were allowed to participate in these forums. Mr. Potts, when talking about open enrollment, you mentioned doing exit interviews with families that are leaving. I think this is a great idea, but sometimes unnecessary. Maybe it would have been helpful with the original 157 students that left due to a change in open enrollment laws, but with this latest group of 100 plus students, I think the reason is very clear, and this board has not seemed concerned with those reasons. You talked about the need to find out why families are leaving. Is it a valid reason or an emotional reason? In this case, I would say an emotional reason is a valid reason. You said we need to do a better job of selling our district to our own people. I would say this board is falling short. In the second forum, you again discussed the major problem of out-migration and posed the question, what is Durant offering that West High School is not offering? I can tell you that one major thing Durant and surrounding districts are offering that this one is not is a district and a board that respects the freedom of choice when it comes to the medical treatment of our children. Ms. Beck, when talking about open enrollment, you stated we need to find out why people choose to leave, because if we understand why they choose to leave, we can address those issues and change things so that people choose to stay. You stated that the hardest budget shortfall to get over is out-migration, but you all refuse to reconsider the decision that led to this. Mr. Potts, at one point you asked the KWQC anchor who was reading the question to take her mask off because you couldn't understand her or hear the question. How do you think children in school who are trying to learn are handling this problem? The moderator asked the question about the mask mandate, or when she asked that question, she mentioned that this decision has already been made for this school year, only reinforcing the fact that this decision was not based on safety and community transmission rate data, as there's no plan to reevaluate based on this data.
Thank
During
you.
the second
Your time is
forum,
up.
Ms. Beck talked about the importance of gathering input from stakeholders reaching all edges of the community. There are voices in the district that don't get heard. She stated, I want to hear from them. Well, here we are. Are you listening?
Joe Reinhardt. Joe Reinhardt. Is it on?
There you go.
Joe Reinhardt, 320 Valley Ridge Road, Bluegrass. During the questions, Beck, you equated transgender students using the wrong bathroom with students with particular hair color. I fail to see how this is in any way similar. You also stated that if students are using the wrong bathroom, that's not really your business. But apparently my children being forced to wear a medical device that restricts their breathing for 7 hours a day is your business. You also stated that students have a right to be in school and to be comfortable, but apparently that only applies to the minute population of transgender students. Then the conversation turned to CRT. I agree with Mr. Potts when he said that we should be teaching honest American history, but the end goal should be that we are all united, not further divided. I also do not know why the board or its candidates are even discussing teaching such material to our children when, thanks to House File 802, as of July 1st, it is prohibited by law to teach such divisive, racist material in the state of Iowa. Ms. Beck, you also stated your support for teachers to undergo implicit bias training, which I would suggest falls under the umbrella of CRT. Beck also stated that she is a scientist, that she looks for data, discussing the importance of looking at information in an objective way. That's working, what's working and what is not, and the importance of giving a voice to teachers, students, and parents. I would say you are failing in this regard, and if we want to look at data in any objective way and what works and what doesn't, let's look at the mask issue. Has it worked to stop or slow the spread of positive cases within the school? Not in the least. Let's show green.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Joe. Olivia, you are up.
Beck, when discussing the mask issue, you stated.
Hold on, nobody can hear you.
I haven't started it.
Beck, When discussing the mask issue, you stated you would base this decision based on science and the advice of experts. But apparently that only applies to the science and advice that confirms to your agenda, considering there is plenty of data out there that supports the other side of this argument. Potts, when discussing the mask mandates, you said you believe that the approach could be more targeted and based off of transmission rates within the individual building, and that we should be considering the vulnerability of school children versus the vulnerability of those most at risk, 65 and older. These approaches make sense. What is being done right now makes no sense.
Thank you, Olivia. Up next, we have Dustin Doyle, Hannah Doyle, and Jamie Cook.
Dustin Doyle. I reside at 2636 West 56th Street in Davenport. I'm here because of watching over the forum. Ms. Beck, you have stated before you think parents are the problem. The issue here that I have is we parents have decided whether or not we put our children in your school. We decide whether we pull them out and whether or not you get your funding. We dictate. You call us the problem. We think you'll be the problem. We are here for our children. We care about our children. Anybody who has been divorced knows that if you speak badly about the other child's parent, you're speaking badly about them, because those children are a reflection of the parents. So you speaking badly about us is speaking badly about the children, which means you do not care about our children, and that is why you don't deserve to be on this board.
Thank you, Dustin.
Hello again. My name is Hannah Doyle. I also reside at 2636 West 56th Street. I just have a few questions for you guys tonight. I would like to know a breakdown and explanation of the $74 million of SAFE grant funding, how the funds are being used, how they have been used, and how they are planned to be used in the future for any remaining funds. I would like you to please provide a copy of the Dcsd's application to receive SAFE grant fund money, which will include the Dcsd's proof of eligibility criteria. One criterion of receiving SAFE funds is having or will have incurred a fine or penalty from the school's SEA or other state entities. Such penalties include, but are not limited to, school board, admin, or superintendent pay cuts, loss of wages for educators and staff, etc. Please provide proof of which penalties were suffered and how grant monies were used to alleviate them. I would also like to know how many families opted out of Dcsd through open enrollment on or after September 20th, 2021. And how many funding dollars were lost as a result. I would like to know how much money the Dcsd has spent on providing required medical devices such as masks. I would like to know how much money the Dcsd has spent on hiring of a PR firm to handle the loss of students to open enrollment. And I would also like to know under what authority does the Dcsd give itself permission to require the use of medical devices for all students and staff? Is Dcsd held accountable for any physical, mental, or emotional damage caused to students or staff due to the requirement of medical devices and treatments such as masks? And if you are, what is the financial burden of that? I would also like to know, does the Dcsd have on hand the medical history, needs, and requirements of each student or staff member? Moving on from masks, I'm interested to know, and I would like you to please provide complete and thorough details and documentation pertaining to the program, the Rainbow Division, which should include its purpose and accessibility to all students, staff, and parents. Finally, I would like to provide clear and thorough details and instructions on how parents may have complete access to all curriculum, whether required or elective.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I know you won't respond to my questions tonight, and that is why I have filed them under official FOIA or a FOIA request.
Thank you, Hannah. Up next, we have, is it Jamie Cook? Is that right? Okay. And then we will have Madeline Pitson.
Jamie Cook, 11624 110th Avenue, Davenport, Iowa.
So proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the
Got a response that time, huh? You know that rampart that the British were blowing up? The only reason it was still standing was patriotic bodies holding it up. We ain't going nowhere. You're gonna listen. You're gonna respond.
Thank you, Mr. Cook, and thank you for your service. Madeline Pitson, Dennis Pulse, I don't want to say that one wrong.
Yeah.
Vidalin Pulse, is that right? Vadalin. Thank you.
Madeline Pitson, 1538 Wildlife Drive. Masks don't work. I have proof. Me and my brother looked at a paper mask under a microscope this morning. There were huge gaps. If you are educators, then you should know that a virus is like a grain of sand compared to a hole this big. The mask is distracting from learning during the school day. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. Dennis Pulse.
The mic's off.
Thank you, Madeline and Dennis Pulse. And Vidalin Pulse. Beta-Lynn. I apologize. Beta-Lynn.
No problem. She'll get 2 minutes. I'll get 2 minutes. She wants to say something on her own. She just happened to be up here with me right now. All right. Dennis Pulse, 502 West 16th Street, Davenport. You guys have seen me up here how many times now? I'm going to keep asking the same question. Why do they got to wear masks in schools but nowhere else in the community? I still have yet to get an answer for that. I understand you can't answer whatever's not on the agenda, but I mean, come on. A simple because you have to, or a simple we have no choice, just anything would be nice. On the other hand, we know it's not going to happen. So, you know, it's November 2nd. It's coming quick, guys. Real quick. We got some candidates that look a lot better than a lot of you guys sitting up here right now. They will be voted for. Just beware. Some of you have done a good job. Some of you have decided to take our personal choice and say, we don't care. So I'm done with my 2 minutes. If you want to hear from my daughter, here she is.
Thank you.
Vital Pulse, 502 West 16th.
It's okay. Calm down.
The mask should be optional because there are kids that cannot wear the mask because of something. I am asthmatic, so I cannot wear the mask. It hurts to wear the mask all day long. And
You're doing good. Take your time.
that's it.
You done? Okay. Good job.
Thank you, Ms. Pulse. We have Rebecca Pulse, Michael Elliott, and James Quinn.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Pulse. I'm at 502 West 16th in Davenport. I am not very good at public speaking, but I'm stepping out of my comfort zone to come up here and voice my opinion, to show my support for my children, not only mine, but all the other children that we are all fighting for, to give their freedom of their choice. It should be optional. We should have our own decisions. We should not be mandated by people who don't believe anything that we do. Just a couple points to point out. Potts talked about keeping parents informed, involved on board, and making them feel like they have a stake. Well, I can tell you right now, the majority of this board has failed miserably in that regard. Beck, when discussing pregnant students, stated that they have changed terms, her and women. Are you suggesting that males can become pregnant? Because this goes against all science. You also stated that the terms her and women are archaic. I don't know about you, but I am proud to be a woman. Beck, when asked about academic offerings, you turned it into a racial issue and talked about the importance of bringing in more adults that look like our students. I think given the scores of the district, we should really be focusing more on academics and less on race. Mr. Potts made a comment that I wholeheartedly agree with. He said, when you have good relationships, things work well. When students feel a bond with their school, they do better. The only problem with this, the district and this board is falling far short of this goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pulse. Michael Elliott.
Hello, my name is Michael Elliott, 1906 West 3rd Street, Davenport, Iowa. Former first honor roll student of Davenport Community School District, former Army cryptologic linguist, current father of 4, current local small business owner, current campaign director, and chairman for the Freedom to Choose School Board Political Action Committee right here in Davenport. My message is for the members of this community and not for the board, since the board has made it abundantly clear by their 2-minute rule on public input that they care not to listen. It is actually common for local boards and governments to allow 3 to 5 minutes for public input. They have also declared to KWQC6 during their candidate forums that they have no clue why parents are fleeing with their kids to other local school districts in massive droves, despite the multitude of parent speeches in the last 30 days expressing exactly their discontent and grievances with this board, which should have given them a clue. Since my time is so limited, I will be speaking rather quickly, so please pay attention as I only have 1 minute remaining. Long ago, as I was walking home from Smart Junior High, I happened to see 2 kids getting beat up by 2 other kids, and for some odd reason, by my very nature, I was compelled to stand in between the bullies and their victims. Long story short, after I too was struck, but firmly stood my ground, the bullies left and their victims were gracious for me taking a stand and helping them. Once again, I find myself standing in between bullies and their victims. This time, it is the board that are the bullies and the parents, teachers, and school children that are their victims. Parents have expressed their concerns about violence, mistreatment, poor academic performance, misguided curriculums, and now health management mandates that I specifically question their very jurisdiction to have purview over. Attention Davenport community members, this board is a lame duck. They care not what anyone has to say. They do not think that the community will stand up for their rights. In fact, they are counting on it. So I ask you this, what will you do to stand with me and put yourselves in between the bullies and their victims in this Davenport tragic story that has been unfolding before our very eyes?
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott.
James Quinn, 3536 West 29th Street, Davenport. For over a month now, the parents of students in the Davenport School District have brought their concerns to this board. These parents have shown how their young children have been exposed to respiratory disease and skin lesions as they're forced to breathe every day through bacteria-fueled incubators of saliva and mucus. Those that aren't compliant, well, they're isolated, alienated from any social interaction with their peers, and denied educational materials by direct order of your superintendent. The psychological trauma and emotional trauma this school district has inflicted on our children will carry with them for years, if not life. It's any wonder, you just saw the slide on here, why our 3rd through 5th graders rated their emotional safety well below the SAFE score. The 6th and through 12th graders also rated their physical safety and relationships in the school well below the state score. And then you have the education issues. But this latest issue is just another example of an incompetent school board that pays lip service to their constituents. The current board members have done a fantastic job of representing what our children face when they express their concern. Our district cannot even obtain full accreditation because of the board's inability to correct the issues that caused their accreditation to be pulled. This board feels that their resources are best spent putting out all the little fires caused by their rash actions rather than developing programs of academic excellence throughout the district. We believe it's time to change this. On November 2nd, you will have an opportunity to change this board. If you would like to see more communication and more openness to what's going on in our schools, then please write in Hannah Doyle and James Quinn in the space provided for writing on the ballot. For more information, go to www.freedom2choose.org.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Up next, we have Patricia. All right. And then we will have Mike Siebert.
Good evening. I'm Patricia DeWyke, 2651 West 34th Ferdow Street in Davenport. I'm very actively looking to remove my 5 children from your district, especially if Miss Beck stays where she's sitting. This is my child's mask on Friday. Would you sit in your classroom having a bloody nose, Miss Beck? Would you expect your child to sit there, blood running down her nose, sucking and breathing her blood? Anybody? Nope, that was my child, Friday. She finally got to go to the nurse where it didn't stop for 10 minutes. Enough is enough. Really? When are you going to follow the science? Right. The real science. Stop worrying about your one person that's in your district that's suing you and worry about all of us. What if we bring a lawsuit to you next time we walk up in here? What's going to happen then? Because we have rights. This is America, land of the free still. Please, God, let it be free. Please let our children breathe. Please respect us. Please listen to us. You're not allowed to talk to us back? Okay, fine. When people call you on the phone, write you an email, respond. It's called respect. My child goes into that classroom and disrespects her teacher. I hear about it. She's going to be in trouble. You're disrespecting and you're showing how to be disrespectful to all of our children. You're teaching them disrespect every day. Not only in my child's school, also does she get shoved down all of your guys' new agendas? And that she needs to decide if she wants to name herself Ralphie or Melfi tomorrow or her real name. Guess what? My daughter was born a girl, and that's her choice. If another child is uncomfortable, I get it. They need to have choices too. You don't need to shove it down their face.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Mike Siebert.
There we go. Mike Siebert, 933 South Michigan Avenue. Sticking with the spirit of the holiday, I'm guessing by this postcard that some of you are really scared. Scared that like-minded parents have come together and taken on the establishment. Our campaign team and scores of volunteers have held meetings, made Facebook posts, done live recordings, door knocked, phone banked, put two powerhouse candidates on campaign signs, and even held a rummage sale to fund them. Moreover, it's the generosity of blue-collar moms and dads that haven't forgotten where they came from that have made any of this remotely possible. To all of you, thank you. It's no surprise why we're here. You woke us all to the desperate need for change. Our candidates haven't run from the controversy, rather they have run towards it. They have had the conversations that you yourselves refuse. They have responded to phone calls and emails, made personal appearances, and have been one step ahead of your attempts to silence them. You see, we're not funded by unions or big Chicago dirty money. Nope, it's a dollar spent from a dollar donated. In our case, like every vote, every penny counts. November 2nd is going to come and go, and win or lose, we'll still be here. For those not sure where you belong or where you can make a difference, join our team. We need you. We're not divided, nor will we ever be. We're resolute in one common goal, and that's to restore freedoms and liberties that the board is selling to the highest bidder. Our PAC is something you rebuke, but you won't forget. No tricks, no treats. We're the freedomtochoose.org, and we're just getting started. Take that to her. This is my son that goes to Durant Public Schools.
Thank you both. Thank you to all who participated in open forum. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Poston. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Kleinjerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Beck?
I move the board approve the following resolution recommended by the administration. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the treasurer, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of October 6, 2021 through October 19th, 2021.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Kleinjerome?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Superintendent report.
None at this time.
Committee reports. Director Poston.
Gary, are you on?
I don't see.
No. Joe's saying no.
Okay. We met last Wednesday, Finance Committee. We had a very productive meeting. There's some things that I want to go over, and Karen, I think, probably will want to fill in. First of all, we've added Jamie from HR to be on the Finance Committee. When 80% of our budget is spent on salaries, I think it's critical that we have our HR person on there. So that's going to be a welcome addition, and she will be a permanent fixture on that committee. Also, monthly, we're going to have, did we come up with the name? We're calling it the Census Report. Does that sound right? Okay. But anyway, this will track where we are currently as far as all employees in the district, and so that we can follow that as we go through and look in where we need to fill in. So that was one item that we spent a lot of time discussing. And then we got into the Esser Report, and Esser $2 need to be, there's $18 million that needs to be spent by June of 23. That's when that expires. And then we also talked about Esser $2 or Esser $3 coming in after that. We talked about what we're going to do with the Esser dollars. We talked about, you know, the possibility of more pre-K, summer school. So we had a discussion on that, and you know what it would take to either hire interventionists or other teachers. But then at that time, Gary Sinclair spoke up, and I think I've got this quoted right, but he said, every dollar has to have an exit plan, and what are we going to do long term? We've got to avoid what he called a funding cliff. And traditionally, this is what has happened here with Davenport schools. Something gets funded temporarily, whether it's grant money or any other money funded either from the government or whatever. And this has to stop. That's what's got us in trouble. So we hire additional people to fund this program. The program ends, and we still have the additional people. We talked about a 5-year plan with the Esser funds. And I think the other thing we talked about too is, as far as our finances, we're better off than we were a year ago, but we're a long ways from being out of the woods. You know, I would liken it to, we've got 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot in the banana peel, and it's nothing that we've got to, you know, turn away from. This is still serious. We need to pay our teachers and our staff more. There's no question about that. But how do we do that until we right-size our district, both from a staff and a building standpoint? And then some of the decisions that we've made here recently, open enrollment is a huge factor. So we've got open enrollment, and we've got to right-size the district. And if that doesn't happen, I don't see how we can pay our staff more money. So that's my big concern. I think with open enrollment, I think and I'm talking strictly from a financial standpoint, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. We're just literally shooting ourselves in the foot. The open enrollment out is going to be a huge issue. So, Karen, was there anything else you wanted to add to that? Otherwise, we'll turn it over to Kevin.
No, I think you've covered it. I guess I don't see it quite as like 1 foot in the grave. I do think we've made great strides, but that doesn't mean we sit back then and go, okay, now we've done it, now let's do something else. It's always got to be in the forefront for us. it's not a, once you fix it, it's fixed forever. So it's something we always have to be concerned about.
Well, we prepared an agenda to share, and this is exactly what we've been going towards. To our board members, if you guys saw inside the walls of that finance committee, we are engaged in dialogue, and this is a moment that we've been working towards, to where our board members come and give the report. And so, excellent job doing a synopsis of exactly what was discussed in our finance committee. So first of all, I want to thank you, board members, for the continued push, because that's exactly what we need to continue our success. It's the goals of the district, the direction that is necessary to keep this district in a systemic way financially stable. So I want to say that everything that we talked about on our list to fill back in was reported out by our two board members, and so I want to thank you guys for that very much.
Yeah, Kent, you made that very simple.
As Dan would say, I think you knocked it out of the park with your description.
He did.
Hey, I do have a question. Okay, the open enrollment thing. I think you know where I'm going to go with this. I know it's happening across the state. I believe, I'm trying to remember what meeting we were in when we discussed this. Maybe it was an ISB thing I was on. People across the state have been on-enrolling their kids on before October 1, and then they're going to enroll them again in October 16th, so they're not in the certified numbers, right? So what happens when that happens? It comes back on the taxpayers, doesn't it?
That's correct. If we have students that were not on our account the prior year, and then we receive the students and they go to another district, so we never have the students, we will be paying that district open enrollment tuition, and we will go to SBRC and do an on-time funding request. It will be in the following year account, but at the current year, they will grant us authority to spend those dollars, which comes directly from the taxpayers. It's 100% property tax.
And that works even if they just leave them at home for 2 weeks and then they come back?
I believe so. If they only to the portion that we are having to pay the tuition. So if it's 50% of the year or 75% of the year, that's what we would receive.
Okay. I just wanted to point that out because I don't think people think about that stuff all the way through.
Yeah. One of the things I wanted to go back and emphasize, and Kent covered that pretty well, but on our Esser funds, we have a process where we meet every single week to go over requests that we have that we require people to submit kind of an application so it fits how Esser dollars are required to be spent. When we receive those and we approve those as a committee, which Jamie and I are both on, we send that to the cabinet. At least one cabinet member is aware of every single application, so we can talk to that, so we can make sure that we have the right size and the right scope that can affect students' achievement as closely as possible. Some aren't always exactly that. It might be a health and safety item, but if there's a program or something that is related to Esser, that we'll push that through cabinet, and when cabinet approves that, then we'll allow the expenditure to happen. So there is a vetting of that application very closely. We keep a very good database, especially when we talk about staffing. When Gary said every dollar, he's right. I will say, as long as I'm here, when there's any dollars spent on staff, when this ends, we have to make some changes. We will not continue to have that level of expenditure when these grant funds are over. And really, for that matter, any size, any grant funds that we would have, it doesn't have to be Esser funds, but it would be any. We have to make sure that we follow that or be able to absorb it in other grant funds. It may be a change in how we do things. So that's a little bit about Esser. And we have two buckets of Esser funds, Esser 2 and Esser 3. Esser 3 right now is being used on direct instruction. We cannot use Esser $3 for general things until all of Esser 2 funds are spent. I just want to make sure that you know that. So we kind of got Esser 2, Esser 3A, and Esser 3B. So we're in the middle of that, and we're trying to plan that through the Esser committee and earmarking those funds as we go. There are staff that we're looking at hiring for second semester. That's a big lift that we'll be doing, and to be able to go on to the following year. So we'll have 2 to 2.5 years of that use of funds.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Posh, who chairs the Finance Committee, for knocking that out of the park. We appreciate that. And I'm glad that we have a game plan in place, that we just don't create things and then figure out where the money's coming from later after it runs out. Any other committee reports? All right, with that, before we go into items requiring action, I'm gonna take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back.
It's like this will take a good part of 6 hours to get done.
If we want to use beginner MTSS conversation. I'm just worried about like that. I mean, we're sitting here saying we need to have a standalone meeting. Giving them time to nothing else on it. All three of the traditional high schools said that they would like to discuss. They would like to talk that through. Yeah. Problem is, fast footwork to get that ready.
Given to us to be able to make some decision.
Yeah, I know, but it still wasn't right.
Agree.
Thank you for, what's that?
Made our job easier.
Yeah.
I literally have my agenda and you're going, check, check, check.
You know, we're gonna do something. What's that? Yeah. You can always write stuff down.
She has a kid to pick up.
Yeah. Let's see where we are. Yeah, we got it.
The feedback they gave us. Yeah, agreed. Jake's been super helpful on the sidelines here.
You need copies. I know how it works now.
I got my paperclip, whatever thing to go, and then I went in there to swipe it during the drama, and they it wouldn't let my badge recognize my badge on the machine.
They're like, this thing smells like weed.
It's my new one.
Oh, okay. Here's what you need to know. I told them last time. This will be the projector for the room. People that are listening online, like there's microphones all over the place. They can so. Ben's comment section.
I think it's something like that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Or they didn't invite me to the party.
Yeah, that's probably the second thing is probably more likely.
Did they hear what Ben just said?
Probably. That's what I'm saying. We gotta like this.
Even when they're off.
Yeah, these are all for they're all like this.
I might need like a 2-week accommodation. Seriously.
Did you hear me say that, Ben? I just texted.
Bill's over there. Kyle. It's on 99.
Wow.
Yeah, the new kind that they're fitting me for. I'm not getting the over the ear ones, which are fancier. I'm getting the in the ear next time because of mess. I can't wear glasses, mess, and over the ear. It picks up like all kinds of static all the time. Oh my goodness. Such a great night.
I got a basketball game. 8 o'clock it starts. Let's go.
8 o'clock? That's a long
I know.
It's a late game.
For 6th grade basketball.
Why don't you have more? Oh, but I usually just. Why don't you have more gym space?
I have a what?
So I have a question. Gym space. You and I.
That's just because we also talk about
We need candy.
and we talked about That makes you feel a little bit better, doesn't it? Where did you say you went? Over to Garfield?
I don't know.
How was it?
My husband. Sorry to hear you.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Oh, yeah, it's a little strange, I know.
Bruce had another engagement, and Jamie is out of town for work.
At the beginning of the day, 8 a.m.?
Yeah, he had
Oh,
they had like a COVID outbreak or something at one of the facilities, so he had to go up and man it.
He has to, I'm sure
Yeah.
his hearing's getting worse.
Bruce had another engagement
He's
tonight.
talking louder, and now I'm always like, huh?
Director Klein Jerome. Paging Director Klein Jerome.
It's so much.
And the plexiglass.
Oh, I got one. Thanks. Yep.
But it's something to consider when building your master schedule.
Yeah, it's just a problem getting, yeah, but what are you, the first thing that
Jay,
isn't?
will you knock on that window and see if Joe's ready? Yes. All right, we're back. We will move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 10.01?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
ISBA bylaws gives each member board a delegate who casts the board's votes on issues before the delegate assembly. School board members provide input on IASB's legislative platform, and your priorities help influence legislators and government. I move the board approve Director Potts to serve as the delegate for Davenport School Board at the 2021 Iowa Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Congratulations, Bruce. May I have a motion on subject 10.02?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I recommend the board approve the sharing agreement between the Mississippi Bend AEA and Davenport Schools for shared special education director Kim Hoffman for 20% of her time at $60,000.
Second.
Seconded by Director Poston. Hang on one second, because I didn't get all this put on this one. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. We will move on to discussion items. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, President. Tonight we have with us, sorry, I'm going to bring some chairs up here so our members can sit here. You guys want to come up here? Sorry. You keep them in line. Lisa. Gotcha.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry, Tara. One of the commitments that we're trying to make is sharing data with our community on a cadence, a regular basis. As the agenda committee is planning this, we're trying to put it on the committee of the whole, as Lisa had shared with the district previously. And sometimes we have to make adjustments. So tonight it's on as a discussion item on a regular school board meeting. Tonight we're going to be looking at our literacy data, fall data. I want to remind our school board that we are on a continuum of data review. So this is the cadence of the data review where we are right now. So in the course of a year, our fall data comes back. We review that data, and that becomes a benchmark for us. Okay, here's our baseline. Then we take another literacy data point in January, which we then can review in February and look for changes. Okay, what do we notice? What's to celebrate? What are our next steps? In the spring, we look at our data to help generate our next steps. What do we do for the following year? How do we tweak our long-range plan? And as to use Gary Sinclair's words, your long-range plan has a one-year contingency. And so that's exactly what we do with the cadence of our data. So what you're looking at today is a little bit different than that spring than the spring data that you would look at, where you would evaluate that, do a needs assessment, realign resources. What we are looking at today is the data, kind of our benchmark data, and moving forward. And so as you look at this, our team members that are here tonight to present are going to be sharing with you that continuous improvement process, which is the same graphic that you see. And you'll notice that our PowerPoint is the same. We're trying to get in a rhythm with our data selection. The team that's going to be reviewing our data tonight is Lisa Stevenson, the Director of Learning and Results, and we have Tara Parrish with us tonight. She is our literacy expert. The person, Bonnie Acey, was not able to join us tonight because she's very ill today, and she was looking forward to this like you wouldn't believe. So she would be here with us today if she weren't ill. So with that being said, Lisa, I'll turn it over to you guys for our literacy presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We are happy to be here and share updates on early literacy and literacy for K-8 in general. If you go to slide 2, Brenda, we included as a reminder or courtesy, I suppose, the questions that you've been working through with IASB. So if you have, as you look at this data and notice and wonder, maybe your questions can be formed based on these sample questions, perhaps. And then as a reminder, in slide 3, we want you to understand that tonight's presentation is a shortened version of what you experienced with Conditions for Learning a few weeks ago, but nonetheless, it's timely data that we wanted you to see. And it is part of our year-long calendar for 21-22, which TJ just shared. So number one, our goal tonight is to remind you of the continuous improvement process. That's a cycle that we're on with each of our priority areas, literacy being one of the top priority areas. And secondly, our outcome, we hope for you as a board, is that you can examine our current reality. That would be our fall literacy data for FAST that all of our students K-8 participated in September. And then we're also going to look at our ISASP data, which is our Iowa State assessment exam that all of our 3rd through 11th graders took in April. And the data just came back to us in August or September. So you're getting it as quickly as we could get it to you. On slide 4, I think sometimes with all this data, we're thinking as a team that you're asking yourselves, like the why are we looking at this? Why does this matter? And so as we were preparing this presentation, we asked ourselves that same question. And I think we highlighted in bold there for you why our literacy outcomes and literacy data align well with our mission and vision, and why this is important work that we need to attend to. Additionally, I'm not sure if Brenda, if you can see into the notes on that slide or not, but this data is a very heavily weighted piece that drives our Iowa school performance profile. And in November, they tell us, possibly December, the state will be releasing updated rankings of our schools. So if you remember a few years ago, that was like a school report card that came out in December, and all of our elementary, junior high, and high schools received ratings of. The rating categories are exceptional, high performing, commendable, acceptable, needs improvement, or priority comprehensive. And so what the Iowa School Performance Profile will do and tell us in the very near future is how our Davenport schools have landed after their most recent ranking, which would have been 2019. So that is also a big part of our why, because this early literacy data is a heavily weighted piece of that. On the next slide, you'll see a familiar slide that is just a reminder, a friendly reminder that when we're reviewing data, we want to think about these 3 norms. We want to think about it from a perspective of I'm a learner as a board member. What is this data telling me? We want to focus on what we can control, not what we cannot, which is forever a task of a board member. And then we want to take collective responsibility for the whole child. We want to think about how literacy is one piece of the whole child education that kids in Davenport are receiving, and that all means all. So we want all of our children, regardless of what subgroup they may or may not belong to achieve at their highest levels. The next slide is related to outcome 1 that was noted at the very beginning, which is reviewing the continuous improvement process. So we really keep this in our forefront as we're doing work day in and day out related to Pbis and literacy, as well as in all areas. It helps us think about where are we, what are we doing well, what's our plan. TJ just went through all this. I'm not going to go over it again with you, but as he said, current state is literally our current state. What did we do this fall in our testing with FAST, and what did we do in the most recent testing for ISASP? The next slide helps us answer question 1, or part 1 of the SIP, the continuous improvement process, which is what is our desired state. So back on August 2nd, we stood here in front of you and we talked about these 6 goals that we had landed on that would help us move Davenport forward in the area of literacy. And what I did was highlight in yellow the ones that we're able to report out to you on tonight. So 95% of our K-8 students were screened in the fall. That was our goal, and we exceeded that. We were able to test 97% of our students, which is quite a feat given how many online learners and students with in and out with COVID that we've had over the last month or so. The second goal is that our students who were below the benchmark or progress monitored, that data I won't be able to give to you until January or February when we have all the students who are below proficient in the system with active progress monitoring data. The third goal that I can report out is that we want 80% of our students to meet benchmark. And we know, as we talked about back in August, that we're not there. But at this time, our percentage is 52% for our K-6 students and 52% for our 7-8, which is really unbelievable. But they're exactly the same. Indicators 4, 5, and 6 will come to you in future reportings at future COW or board meetings, because that's when the data becomes available to us. And then we have an internal goal that we've shared with principals, and we're supporting through our implementation teams and professional learning like today, that all of our students who have been below benchmark in the fall and then in the spring of 2021 will have an intervention scheduled and will be receiving reading support in that way. But it's not quite ready to share with you yet if we made that 95% or not. Hopefully when we get to come back in the winter, we'll have that data. Next slide, please. This is Tara.
So every year we complete the state-required universal screening, which informs our multi-tiered system of support, or MTSS. So these first charts here are showing our fall literacy screening data for K-6, and then again for 7-8. So K-6 is showing from fall of last year at 53% to fall of this year at 52%. That second chart is showing, again, for 7th and 8th grade, fall of 2020 at 53% and fall of 2021 at 52%. As part of our continuous improvement plan, we're looking at general data overviews, and then we'll dig a little bit deeper. We have some data tables for you to look at as well, in addition to these charts on the next couple of slides. Next, we have some more fall FAST literacy data, but this one is kind of showing some more trends. So this chart is showing the percent of students who are proficient on the fall screening benchmark for the last 3 to 4 years. Again, it's looking at that FastBridge universal screening. We have the grade level on the horizontal axis and then the percent proficient across the vertical axis. And this helps us to look at the data trends over the past 4 years when we're looking at percent of students who were proficient on these assessments. So one example of something that you might notice here is that 2nd grade has been trending down each year, while 3rd grade was continually trending up until this fall. Lots of other things that you can probably glean from these, and you'll have some time in a little bit here to start looking through that. Then our next chart is showing the ISASP. So this was again from last April of 2021. ISAS stands for the Iowa Statewide Assessment of Student Progress and is our state mandated annual assessment that reports and is reported out and drives our school performance profile, rankings, and then status that Lisa was speaking about. So students in grades 3 through 12 take the ISASP, and this particular ELA assessment includes 2 writing prompts in addition to the reading and language arts test. When looking at this chart, the red is the indicator of the percent of students who were not proficient on the assessment. Green indicates the percent of students who are proficient, and blue, the percent of students who scored at the advanced level. And those 3 performance levels of not yet proficient, proficient, and advanced utilize predetermined cut scores. So one thing that you might notice from this particular chart is you can see the steady increase from 7th grade through 11th grade in the percentage of students who were either proficient and then again in advanced.
Okay. Forgive me if I'm not quite as fluent on this part, but this was going to be Bonnie's part, so I'm subbing here. We go. So that we know on the next slide, Brenda, we know that last year wasn't a typical year due to COVID, and because of that, we've had to make some adjustments to how we process and analyze data. We're proud of the work that's happened with our early literacy plan in light of all of these challenges. Last spring, when we had a whole year of literacy data to look at, we worked to develop the early literacy plan. Following the continuous improvement process, this summer the plan was actually developed. One example for how we created the plan with teacher input was we gathered feedback from teachers who worked in the summer program using the 95% phonics program. Based on their input, we ended up, with your approval, purchasing a new phonics core curriculum for all of our teachers in K-3. And this action, as you can see from the graphic, aligns to our current reality of needing a more explicit foundational skills instruction program that's aligned to the science of reading. And I believe all of you had a chance to see that explicit program in action, either at many grade levels or at least one grade level at K-3. So we are currently, as TJ said, implementing the actions. We're, sleeves rolled up in there doing it right now in early literacy. Our early literacy committee continues to meet weekly, where we plan and support the implementation of all of these actions. The data and analysis serves as a progress measure from the plan to inform our actions. It helps us assess our impact each time we have new data, such as when we move from fall fast to winter to spring, and then from spring ISASP to the next spring. Every time we take opportunities to assess our impact to see, is our plan working and do we need to adjust? This fall data, could you
say that again? Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
That's fun. That's never happened before. Okay. So this fall data, as TJ said, was our first check. It's really a baseline of this plan we started in August. And then in February, we're going to have this plan go forward again in the cascade model, where we have lots of stakeholder groups analyzing building and district data. Here at the board table, you're seeing district data, but I do want you to know that our DSAT and our district leadership team, our building principals, and then eventually teachers in November will all see this plus their building data, because they want to look at how their students at their school performed. Linked on this slide is the district priority overview that includes a summary of our early literacy plan. Thank you. Yeah. So this should be a document too that's somewhat familiar to you from the presentations we did in August. But it's there for your reminder or review, I suppose. All right, next slide, slide 12. This is where we get into the fun stuff. And we, like teachers, we held back the papers from you because we didn't want you to dig in too fast. Yeah, Tara's going to come around and pass out here the fast bridge data tables. Not these are ISASP. So you have one sheet that's K3 and one that's 4-8. And Brenda, you could go ahead and open that top link, please. The fast bridge data tables. Yep. And once you get your 2 papers, we'd like you to look at these data questions that are on slide 13. We're going to give you 5 minutes to do some individual processing. And as you're processing, if you wouldn't mind scrolling back to the presentation, there'll be 2 questions. Actually, it's 2 parts, notice and wonder. What do you notice when you look at the data? What can we say to be true? And then the second question is, what does it make you wonder? So we're going to do that for 5 minutes. On the very next slide, there's a timer. Thank you. Yep. The next, thank you. If you click on that arrow, that'll actually give us 5 minutes. And go ahead and make notes to yourself. What do you notice about the fast fall data? What do you wonder? And then be ready. When the timer goes off, we'll popcorn around and let you share out one thing that you noticed and one thing that you wondered.
Isn't it? Maybe. You did condition for learning last time.
You're right.
Trying to make it look the same so it's easy, so it's predictable. Sorry. 2 minutes off my turn. Tara just gave me a stink eye.
Okay. I thought a buzzer might go off, but that was your 5 minutes. Hopefully you had time to look at both sets of data. Our board, you actually have subgroup data as well as all. So what are some things you noticed? What are some things you wondered as you looked at that fall literacy data? And anyone, do you want to call on people, President Gosa, or would you like them to just
I can call them out if you want. That's
Okay.
fine. Who wants to go first? Director Klein, Jerome.
I always believe in comparing apples to apples. So rather than look at just kindergarten scores across the board, if you look at the first graders in 2021 versus second graders in 21, 22, there was gain made between last year's first graders to this year's second graders, and they are the same kids. Same goes for 6th to 7th and 2nd to 3rd. When I was teaching, I like to look at the same student scores, not, oh, this class versus a whole different group of kids. So that's what I noticed.
Thank you.
Director Hayes.
I noticed that, but in the kindergarten group, I noticed that in the ELL group, that they went from the lowest basically to the highest in 21, 22. And I also question, all of these children are in the same classes, same curriculum, but it's like there's some type of barrier with the people of color, because if you notice through all of them, usually the white students have the highest score, but what are the others missing that they can't hear, that there's so much variation in the scores?
Director Beck.
Yeah, Director Hayes pretty much took the words right out of my mouth. I said in pretty much every grade for every year, non-white students have fewer proficient scores, which is very telling or very concerning. And I wonder about that. My other observation is that no matter what, we're not meeting our benchmark in any of these situations, even pre-pandemic. So we aren't even at 75% in any of these groups. So.
Director Poston.
Well, again, as was mentioned, the most striking thing is the minorities versus the white. And then the other thing I noticed, first grade 2021 and sixth grade 2021, those scores are so much lower than what you see previously. So I don't know what the difference would be there in first and sixth grade.
Was that my cue? I agree with what all of the directors said. My question is, when I look at this, is it the same amount of students, that went from first grade to second grade? Did some kids leave? Did we gain more kids? And I'm sure you all have to break down a way more data than what we're seeing right here on that. And then, there's a lot of factors. Did all the same kids stick in the same class or each grade? Or because obviously you switch kids up and things like that. Did that play a dynamic in it? But like Director Poston had said, those for the first graders and sixth graders, that dropped substantially in the 2021 school year. Yeah. I mean, all the numbers are low, but Director Poston.
I just have a question. So the screening process, just fill us in how that took place. How was that handled?
Screening, Screening happens 3 times each year. Each buildings have a 2-week window to complete the screening, so that all of our assessment swords are gathered in a relatively same amount of time. So one classroom doesn't have more instruction than another. And in our K-6 classrooms, it is done as a one-on-one assessment, teacher and student. And in our 7th, 8th is it's called A reading. It's an adaptive computer-based assessment. And that is due to, in 7th and 8th grade, that one-on-one assessment with the number of language arts teachers to give the assessment and the number of students that they have, it would take a lot of instructional time to give an assessment one-on-one. So the A reading is much more efficient to be able to screen a large number of students rapidly.
Thank you.
What are some of the things that the students are graded on for this?
So our kindergarten and first grade students, it's the foundational skills. So a lot of the skills that you saw in your 95% visits are the things that are going to come up on the assessments. And then as you go to 2nd through 3rd grade, you're looking at how accurately students are able to read text, and are they able to read it at a fluent rate so that to support their comprehension of the text. And then in 7th and 8th grade, the A reading is a broad assessment. So it covers everything from vocabulary to comprehension skills.
Director Kleindrum.
The kindergarten scores are, I mean, not great, but quite good. Do we know if preschool was involved with a lot of these kids last year during all this hybrid and then back to, because, 55.2%, there's only one 6th grade that would be higher than that. So, I mean, for kindergartners who wouldn't have been in the school system, this is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. We're working on gathering the data for our students who are incoming kindergartners and attended a high-quality preschool. And it sounds like after parent-teacher conferences, we'll have more information on that.
Director Poston.
On slide 10, going from 3rd grade to 4th grade, not yet proficient dropped dramatically. So is there any reasoning behind that? Was there a push in 3rd grade ahead of before they went into 4th grade?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat the last part of your question? I was pulling up the data to take a closer look.
Was there anything going on from 3rd to 4th grade there? There's a dramatic drop in not yet proficient going from 3rd grade to 4th grade.
So a big piece of 3rd grade as they're wrapping up learning those foundational skills that students would have missed out on with having hybrid instruction or online only instruction potentially. If they weren't in front of a student as frequently, they didn't have as many opportunities to apply those skills that they were learning. So that could be one potential piece. There's probably other factors that went into play as well. But 3rd grade is where those standards end. So that's where we really want to get kids there by the end of 3rd grade, so that going into 4th grade, they're prepared to read and engage in those rigorous texts.
That is definitely something that other groups that we've shared this data with picked up on too, meaning these 3rd graders were taking a writing assessment where they were responding to a writing prompt on a computer, and that isn't generally how we have kids in K3 write. We have them do paper pencil writing because they're working on letter formation and writing in general, handwriting. And so this is a big switch for our third graders when they have to take this assessment in that format. So one of the things that the teachers and the DSAT and DLT did, they'll have an opportunity to give feedback. And quite a few of them said, teachers want to be able to dig in and see how this really works so they can start practicing with the students so that they're more comfortable and not nervous about writing on the computer in third grade. So I think that's something we'll definitely be working on third quarter and fourth quarter.
And I think maybe Karen, you were asking this question maybe. Will there be any kind of data to show the kids that were in pre-K versus did you ask that question? Yes, but that data will be available eventually.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working on efficient ways to gather what preschool students attended so that we can see what preschools they attended, were they high quality preschools, and then how does that translate to our kindergarten scores?
We know the answer to that. We've done a historical study of our data. We are at our best. We had 56% of our incoming kindergartners attend a high quality preschool, which means a children's village or a statewide voluntary program. Where those students attend that, it closes the gap that we're looking at. It absolutely makes a difference. It needs to be an incredible high priority for the district. It is one of the proven interventions that this district can do. And I say intervention, it is something that works for students in Davenport. And I'm talking about every one of these subgroups. It works. The other thing that I want to relay about this data is fast. Think about when you run your marathons, Dr. Beck. You have your time at the end, and you have a goal for your time at the end. And then you have your watch that tells you how you're doing towards your goals. The fast is the watch. You take it 3 times a year. It tells you to speed up, slow down. It gives you your and it's very highly correlated, just like your watch is. You know by mile marker 2 what you're going to finish at. And that's what these are. So how our students score in the fall, the winter, and the spring, it's a very close correlation how they score on our state assessments. And so that's why it's critical that our teachers look at this data and review this data. So the evaluation of our preschool, we have a goal in this district to get 80% of our incoming kindergartners attending in a high quality preschool. Because there are some families that have a grandma, an aunt, or an uncle that is probably delivering as high quality. But for the most of our students, that intervention closes the gap. And we have historical pipeline data from Davenport schools that shows that. And there's things all along our pipeline that work. This data has got to improve. We feel a huge sense of urgency about it. The literacy, our teachers feel that sense of urgency. And so how we move forward is absolutely critical with this. But I wanted to reiterate the fact that these are correlations that these are dipsticks that we can see all along the way to see what our mile time is going to be at the end. So.
Okay. Oh, one more. Then we're going to go to the next data set, which is ISAS.
This was just a follow-up question. So to Director Poston. So one of the things that I have learned in my pedagogy studies is that handwriting is a great way to learn things, right? There's a connection between motor movement and learning information. So I guess my question is, are we going to go back to handwriting for our third graders and below? Because it would be a shame if everything went to a computer. There's a lot of research that says that it's not the same learning process.
Great question. Great wonder. And Tara's over here taking notes on everything because we have a parking lot document where we collect all the wonders that the DSAT had, that the teachers will have, and they look at the data in November. And then we have to think about that continuous improvement plan. What did we say our actions were going to be? Was handwriting one of them? If not, should it be? So thank you that we're keeping track of all that. So the next slide, Brenda, moving on from the FAST data. Oh, we just did that one. We just did our whip around. Thanks. The next slide, which is our last processing side, is the ISASP data. So that is the assessment that you might formally remember as Iowa Test of Basic Skills, Iowa Assessments, and is now the ISASP, which is different in many ways because it is an assessment where you need to get 60% or higher to pass. It's not norm referenced. You're not compared to who else is taking the assessment at the same time and then rank ordered. So all of our students have the opportunity to be proficient on ISASP. And if you look at, there's a data table link in there too, Brenda, at the top in green. We're going to give you 5 minutes to look at this data. As a reminder, you have the document with your subgroups on it there. And there's a gap. I wanted to talk about this table too, because I should have done that with the last one. You see all students at the top, 3 through 11 on each of the grades, which these are all required grades. They all take English Language Arts. Then you have our reportable subgroups, which are ethnicity based, as well as students who qualify for special education with an IEP, our English language learners, and our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And then you see, we've only done this 2 times. So we did it in 18-19 in the spring, had a year off for COVID, that quarter when everyone was closed. And then they had the kids do it in April of 21. Yes, they had the kids do that test. So we'll do it again in April of 2022. But you can see here, you can look apples to apples. How do our 9th graders do in language arts? Or you can look apples to oranges, or apples to apples. Look at how those 9th graders did. And then skip 2 years. How did they do in 11th grade? It's not one over because of the gap year there. All right, so if you wouldn't mind clicking that timer, please, for 5 minutes. And you're going to follow that notice and wonder protocol again.
That's not good. Get a culture test. Have Dr. Beck do a culture test.
Okay, the buzzer's going off. Ding. That was your 5 minutes. For ISASP, we'll ask for the same whip around that's on the next slide. If we could have volunteers to share things that they noticed, something they noticed, something they wondered when they looked at our English language arts performance for our subgroups and all students from spring 2021 in English language arts.
Director Hayes.
I question the third grade ELL went from 18.9 down to 0%. Well, actually everyone with the exception of 6th, 10th, and 11th grade went down. And the same trend on this as well in comparison to the people of color.
Director Kleindro.
I also wonder about that ELL in 2021, third graders to have 0. I would think that there would be some scores on there. This is just reading scores, but I assume we have math and science to also, okay, go with this. And what I also noticed was 6th graders in 18-19, all the way up then, 7th graders, if you compare the 2-year gap, they seem to do better. Their scores went up. That's not the case of our elementary. If you go from the 3rd grade to the 5th grade score, the 4th to the 6th, they were, so what was different in that 6th grade to 11th grade 2-year span that they did show some increase?
Director Beck.
Yeah, I noticed kind of the same trends, especially when it came to those upper grades. If you track a cohort, it seems like there wasn't as much of a decrease, or there might have been an increase, no matter what group you were looking at. I did also notice that we didn't get above 72%, I think, in any category at any time. Just a quick question. When we say students with an IEP, is that any IEP whatsoever? So it could be for something English language arts related, but it could also be for something completely unrelated to ELA.
Correct. Mhm.
You're asking if any student with an IEP is in that group?
Is when we say IEP category, it's any IEP, right?
If they're a speech-only IEP, they do not get into that category, is my understanding. And then if they have alternate, Kim, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And if they are an alternate assessment student, which is 2% of our entire population, our most severe needs.
So a student who might be diagnosed with dyslexia would not be included in this category? Kim's back there trying to answer.
They would be included. So I think your question is, if I have a reading goal or a math goal or behavior goal or an adaptive behavior goal, all of those students are included in the IEP section, regardless of goal.
Okay, that's kind of what I was trying to get at. So some of these students could have reading-related IEPs, goals in
Hang
their
on a
IEPs.
sec. Kim, could you come up and use a microphone so the people watching at home could hear that? I apologize. But otherwise, it'll just look like Director Beck's talking to herself.
Sorry, I got people telling me what to say when I get up here.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hello. So what I clarified was, I believe Dr. Beck's question was, regardless of goal area, are all of those students included in the IEP section? So we'll have students with reading goals that have reading issues, maybe not dyslexia, behavior issues, social emotional, adaptive behavior, math. Regardless of the goal area, they're all lumped into that IEP section for any of our data that's disaggregated. And in regard to speech-only IEPs, they typically are included. It kind of depends on the assessment. I don't know if FAST does or not, but the state assessment typically does include them.
Okay, so that was my other wonder, was how does that difference factor in? I mean, the scores are not great for any category of students with IEPs, but if the vast majority are students with a reading goal, for example, then that might make a little bit more sense than if the vast majority are students that only have a math goal or something like that, right?
Sure. So I haven't looked at Davenport's data, but typically in a school district, anywhere from 70 to 80% of your IEPs are related to reading deficits and reading concerns.
Okay, so that makes sense then for lumping
Yep.
that group together. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Poston, did you have anything?
It isn't the case in all categories, but it looks like for some there was quite a drop from 18-19 to 2021. So whether you blame that on COVID or what, and maybe more so of a drop in minorities versus white.
Guess that leaves me. Yeah, kind of along the same lines. I catch myself when I first look at each year and forget to go up to the next year because that's where that kid went to the next year. But all in all, it kind of leads me to believe that kids don't really like reading and things like that nowadays. Yeah, I was kind of surprised by the ELL in the third grade being 0%, and then just the low percentage numbers on those for almost all of the different years. I don't think any of them go above 30%. So that was my takeaway on that. Director Beck?
I think not to get ahead of ourselves, but I think just my main takeaway from all of this is we have to do something different and better, because we can't, this doesn't make, I think, any of us happy.
along those lines, after being in the classroom for the 95% presentations and how engaged all those kids were, I hope these numbers are way better the next time we test them, because it was, and I don't know if that was part of the discussion, but I got to go on day 1 for a first and third grade, and I got to go on day 5 for a third grade. So it's kind of nice to see that progress, even though it was 2 different schools, but the kids were very engaged and excited to be doing it. It was kind of nice to see that. It was almost like it was a game for them or something, but I probably jumped way ahead, and you guys are probably already going to talk about that. Director Poston?
Well, just to follow up to that, and I've said this time and time again, the curriculum I understand is important, but more important is that teacher in the classroom and that pair in the classroom. And, we need to continue to give them the support that they need. And, when I was at Mrs. Panak's class, I mean, I was just blown away the way she had really those kids eating out of her hand. For kindergartners to have that amount of attention span, I was just really impressed. So again, important to give those teachers the support, and again, they're the ones that are going to get the job done.
Director Klein-Jerome?
And to go along with that, and I don't know what the answer is, but attendance is an issue, because the building I was in, the classroom, one little kid came in 10 minutes into the lesson, next one 15, 20, and apparently some came after I left, which meant they got none of the lessons. So it's very important that they be there. I mean, we're providing it, but you got to be there to get it. And I don't know what the answer is to get them there on time and see this as really important, but that also is a big concern. And how do we get them there so that they don't miss out?
Did you guys want to talk about the 95% before we start going into that? I apologize for jumping ahead.
No, actually, I was like, that was a really good segue into the last slide. So what we wanted to end with is just a reminder that there are many pieces of this literacy puzzle that we're working on. And we shared the big puzzle with you back in August, and all these little pieces are rolling out piece by piece. And one of those things was I really wanted and encouraged TJ to allow us to coordinate these visits so that you could get out as board members and see our literacy work in action and be amazed, really, as Dr. Poston said, about what our teachers are doing every day. And so I wanted to say thank you. Bonnie was able to snap these pictures of you. I don't know if you knew that or not, but in our classrooms, and thank you for taking time always as board members, but especially during the work day, to come visit the schools. The teachers are so honored to have you there, as were the principals, and the kids were too. I think they love having guests and visitors. So you saw where we were last week, and I think that was a nice front loading for today. And then, we'll be able to share data with you moving forward about these exact kids. These are the kids that are in those tables, and they have some big needs because of their lapses in learning because of what's been happening to all of us the last couple of years. And so that's why this is really important work. This is our why in early literacy in this picture. And we took good notes, and I want you to know that the next steps are that we'll be collecting, we call it hot dot information from the teachers at all the elementary schools about our action steps and what we should keep doing and maybe think about doing in the future so that we can reach our goals that you saw in the very beginning of the presentation.
Director Beck.
Couple easy follow-up questions. Number one, so to Director Klein-Jerome's point, I happened to visit a little later in the day, so everyone was there, and there was nobody coming in late to the third grade class. Do we structure days differently so that kids who are chronically late maybe don't miss reading every single morning, but can maybe miss math if they're going to be chronically late or something like that? Can the days be structured so that we minimize the impact on one topic? I mean, ideally, there would be nobody who was chronically late, but that's probably not something that we can necessarily control as easily. Just a thought. I don't.
So to piggyback on that, there's two things. One, it is absolutely important to come to school every day. As a matter of fact, it's a law.
Yeah.
And so we work with our families tirelessly to get students to school. The second part is there's a scheduling guidelines for how schools are set up with their schedules. And the purpose for that is to coordinate everything that needs to go on. We have to ensure that our students are receiving core. We have to ensure that all means all for our students. And in order to do that, we have to have scheduling guidelines that make all of that possible. So we have our core, we have our intervention, we have our least restrictive environments for our students, we have the times when it's appropriate to pull out. If you were to ask to alternate that based on chronic students, it wouldn't be possible for a building to constantly adjust that, and it wouldn't be very predictable for a student to have that. So what buildings do is what you noticed is that you were scheduled sometimes right at the start of school, where there's the announcements and the pledge and things like that. So our buildings, they have you probably noticed Mrs. Pennock, she has clip charts and everything. Kids come in and they all have jobs and they know that they're supposed to be at the carpet seated. A huge issue that we run into is it's like a missing piece of the puzzle that a teacher has to go back and fill in when the students aren't there. And that is a daily struggle that we have. We have the most research-based approach to attendance probably in Eastern Iowa, and it was developed, actually Bonnie developed it during her superintendence. It's Attendance Works. And before COVID hit, we were really moving forward in a positive direction with some of those research-based strategies. And so now it's time to get the Attendance Works plan back out, focus on the positive, reward students for coming to school. We had AmeriCorps workers in many of our buildings that worked on caseloads of students. We have family involvement, SAMs. So it's an all-out blitz to boil that list down to a group of students that we can really start to work with in terms of attendance. But it is an issue when you come in 15 minutes late and you miss the first part of a very important phonics lesson. So it's something our buildings battle with every day. The scheduling is something that we work very hard to do to ensure all those components of the day.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, just throwing ideas out there. My other question was, would it be possible for us to do visits like in the spring and just see like sort of what this looks like at a later time in the year, if that's feasible at all? Kind of like in prep for if we're going to look at spring data or something like that. That'd be, I think, super helpful. And for me, it really helps me understand what is happening, like what we vote on when we see it in action, right? And so to me, it helps crystallize what we're doing.
Director Poston.
If it's all right, I'm going to put you on the spot. We had discussion, a fairly lengthy discussion in Finance Committee about, where some of these Esser dollars will go. And I know they've got an Esser committee that's, also working on that too. But so the discussion came down to, more pre-K or working on doing more things with summer school. The participation in summer school this past summer was not very good, and we threw a lot of dollars at that. What's your thoughts, putting more money to pre-K or more money to summer school?
Me personally? We actually just grabbed summer school data from, it's interesting. I don't have it linked in here, but if that's something you'd like to see moving forward, you're correct. We did not have the participation that we would have liked, but we do have some interesting achievement data from the kids who did come to see how they fared from their spring to fall compared to their peers who chose not to come from spring to fall. So I think that's one piece of the puzzle, is thinking about, is the program effective? And then if it is effective, which the data we think shows, how do we get kids to come? So when you ask me, I think what you're asking me is that, is it an or, right? Is it a summer school? Or are you asking if it's an and?
From an early literacy standpoint, where
Sure.
are we going to get more bang for our buck? Is it going to be more pre-K or summer school?
I think if you looked at evidence-based studies across the United States, you're going to see preschool has the biggest return on investment for the public tax dollar. But it can't stand alone, meaning the studies will also tell you that the effects of preschool wear off by second or third grade, the kids that were caught up, if you don't have a strong net in there in second and third grade for kids who have attendance issues or other things that are causing them to not stay at that same trajectory. So I think we definitely, especially with a lot of students who have other factors contributing to how their language is developing, how they're all that stuff that is building blocks to being able to read in kindergarten. That has to happen in preschool.
Again, I do want to thank all of the staff at Fillmore, from the secretary to the team to the teachers. Right when I walked in the building, everyone was nice and accommodating. It was nice for us to go in and see a first grade class and a third grade class. And kudos to that teacher, because there was a kiddo up front kind of getting off task, and she got to it right away and kept going on like it was a normal thing. And then when I went to Hayes on Friday, I had a third grade class and there was a para in the room, which was immensely more helpful. She was able to go in, and when some of the kids were starting to, and she nipped it right away and, you know, helped and addressed them and was able to help them with their stuff as well. So it was very nice to see that in action. And I don't know how all of your visits went, but there was like 5 people in the room with me, and everybody had clipboards taking notes and suggestions. So I mean, that's always very helpful. And I am more than willing to go back to any class that they would like me to. I don't want to be a hindrance on them, but it was a neat thing to see those kids so engaged on doing that stuff. It was just immediately they were firing out answers. They were wanting, you know, to be involved right there. And the transition from carpet to desk to carpet was awesome. It was like a nice routine. They were ready to go. I wish I could get my kids to do that at home. So again, I want to give a huge shout out to Fillmore and Hayes' staff. They did a great job, and I greatly appreciate it. Any other questions, comments? Thank you all very much for the presentation. Thanks for coming all the way up from the back too, Kim, to answer that question. We appreciate you. All right. Now we have the Davenport plan report.
Thank you. We thought we would try a run at our Davenport plan prior to the November 17th State School Board. So what you're going to see is a preview of that. So as you are looking at this and want to give feedback on the presentation, please feel free. But one of the things that you'll notice that the next slide, Brenda, thank you, is that we're broken down into the bullets that you see on our citation report that we report to the State Board of Education. So our categories are leadership, finances, special education, MTSS, early literacy, Pbis, and engagement. So next slide, leadership. And these are all components that are currently going or the direction that we're heading. So the state sustained progress in the leadership area. First of all, we went through a major structure change, and you've seen examples of that tonight. An ongoing cadence of data that we review. That's part of the Learning and Results Department. Our instructional leadership directors are working inside their regions and moving forward with systems of implementation. We have made a recommitment to the school administrators revival. All of our administrators are attending the SAI events at the start of the year, and that collaboration also is critical to the evaluation system of our administrators. The system of implementation accountability. So one of the things that you will begin to see and hear is our instructional leaderships have started biweekly meetings with their administrators, and they're asking them very similar questions in terms of a PLC format. Those conversations will begin to morph into utilizing those ISL standards, which is the next bullet. The one thing that I'm very proud of is the collaboration between the AEA and the DCSD. We have come a long way. They are our experts. They vet our ideas. They make sure that we are in line with the systems that are in the state. And our collaborative partners in the back are, they have come from spots of oversight to a very natural relationship that school districts and AEAs have, and I'm very proud of that. Our local school board meetings, Dan and Linda are incredibly committed to IASB. At the end of every month, we meet with representatives from IASB. They review our board minutes. We get feedback. Hey, did I do this? And they're pretty spot on with their feedback, and they are critical and supportive of us. From there, we generate all of our IASB training and content. Our board members are constantly attending IASB trainings. I know everyone on this board has attended an IASB training in the past, and I believe Dan and Linda haven't missed the evaluators of the superintendent's meeting, and I've been on a handful of meetings where our board members are looked to as leaders, and I'm very proud of that. The most recent one was a very controversial topic, and in the IASB training, and they were looking to Dan for how he handled some of the things, and that was all a collaborative effort based off of our board here. And I know Kent and Karen, we have actually attended some finance committee together. Our established board committee structure is a very effective way for us. It's proven to work in the finance committee, and we recently established that for our long-range facility planning. And again, the database decision making, you will see that begin to cascade all the way through our system and to all key stakeholders, and I'm very excited about that. Our finance, we have a structure. We plan to continue our relationship with Gary. Gary Sinclair has been an excellent advisor for us to help onboard Kevin. I think in our district, one of the things that we need to improve on is onboarding our employees. We meet weekly. We are constantly checking our census report. The collaboration between HR and finance has been much more improved. We have the ability to count, to line item budget, and to forecast. And we obviously are not where we need to be, but we are definitely better than we have been in many years. In terms of reporting, again, our board reports are now monthly. We're utilizing Forecast 5, and it's really helping improve transparency for our district. In terms of special education, this is one of our maintaining citations, and here's how we are moving forward with maintaining in the areas of professional development. We have very key compliance measures that we are keeping track of. We're using fidelity checks. We're providing professional development on individual-based needs. So anywhere we have found an error in our fidelity check, we're assisting, putting together a plan, and moving forward and continuing to check. Collaborating with the AEA on this. MTSS early literacy. As you've seen in one of the previous presentations, we have prioritized our K-3 curriculum needs. As you see, the resource mapping was a huge thing that we knew we had to do. We had too many things on our plate, so we had to prioritize. So we went out and purchased 95% group, which really met the needs of about 5 different programs that we were utilizing. We have allocated our staff members to help support in our literacy initiatives. We have aligned our preschool and our phonics literacy resource to kindergarten. And we've developed a systemic method for tracking our inventory. One of the biggest frustrations is where are our materials? So the instructional management of our materials and our time is one of the biggest things that we can do. And obviously, as we move along, the checklists for mapping those are incredibly important. The journey that we've been on our MTSS Early Literacy Professional Learning, we've shared with you in June and July a heroic, I literally equate this to a heroic effort. The team of people that met, brought together teaching teams because we weren't able to follow our normal data review cadence and follow some of the things that we needed to do. So in June and July, a team came together, really put together a comprehensive early literacy plan that really met our needs. In August, we rolled it out in our BSAT Summit, a new teacher training, and we're beginning to provide letters, which is language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling, which is probably the most comprehensive science-based reading program around. And we're implementing that in our leadership academies. As we move forward, the multiple opportunities to use our universal tier tools. If this isn't working, what do we do next? And really follow the science of reading. This is where it's going to start to get hard and heavy for us as we move forward. Following the science of reading. The huge part of implementing anything is the coaching system. In Davenport, we have collaborative teacher teams. And inside of there, our teachers are working with one another, coaching each other, and utilizing our innovators and other support staff trained in student-centered coaching model at the AA. So right now, we're getting our innovators out ahead of the learning, and many of them have had it, but we're really solidifying that training to put our students at the forefront. Our reading coaches have previously been trained in this method. The data from the FAST, which you guys have seen, and our diagnostic assessments, we are really keeping track of our students and the goal of keeping track of our students and progress monitoring them. In terms of early literacy infrastructure, one of the things that we know is we have to get out ahead of the hiring curve. And we've talked about this at the school board table. Our Esser funds will be moving very soon. We are deploying our Esser resources to help mitigate the factors of early learning loss. And we're going to be examining our onboarding requirements for our new staff. For a new teacher to come on board in this day and age with COVID and things of that nature is very impossible. And so it's really, really important for us to streamline streamline what is important for new teachers coming into Davenport schools. One of the things that I'm very proud of that our learning and results team has put together is a tracking of who has come to our training, who's missing what, and this allows us to differentiate for our staff that have missed. So the team that's keeping track of this, how are we progress monitoring? How are we holding ourselves accountable? We have a core Davenport group of people that are carrying the water every single day. And then we have a larger group of people that consist of other members in the district and members from the AEA and other critical friends that really oversee the implementation of our plan. We are utilizing site visits, monthly leadership academies, TLC academies, and BSAT summits. So many of you attended the kickoff events, the Building Student Achievement Team events. And we're utilizing those to help move this work forward. In terms of Pbis, we have been working tirelessly at our crisis response violence prevention. I'm very proud of that work. There are things that are happening in this trauma-filled environment that we work in that require our teams to come together for the collective good of our buildings. The resource mapping, all of those things are occurring right now. The professional learning, coaching, infrastructure. So the continuous improvement process. This summer, the team, just like early literacy, heroic effort, June and July, put together a rock-solid Pbis plan that rolled out to all of our buildings in a very similar format at the BSAT Summit. And we did some differentiation in this arena as well, and I'm very proud of that effort that moved forward. On August 10th, again, we had our Building Leadership Team Summit, where we talked about sustaining our crisis response violence prevention. and beginning to look back at the foundations of PBIS. And really, we are building up our leadership teams. This is one of the key changes that you're going to notice is that we, as a instructional cabinet and as a cabinet, we are building up the building level teams. It's their jobs, their responsibility to implement, and it's our job to give them the resources, the next steps, help brainstorm, and that's something that you'll notice intertwined in all of this. So our infrastructure, our PBIS core team, very similar. We have a group of people inside the districts that are carrying the water, and we have an oversight team that involves enough critical friends to ensure that we're directly aligned. We meet very regularly, and we're making sure that we're moving forward with implementing our task. So the assessment of our practice, we are constantly looking at our data. We are beginning to take some of the data points that our buildings do self-assessments, and we're going to begin to align those with self-assessments with student outcomes. One of the key things that we're looking at right now is truly defined majors and minors at a district level that will really help keep us, or really allow us to have continuity in our district. Engagement. Our long-range facility process is going to help us create a tool that, when needed, we can engage every building in our district with a staff and a community member. Mr. Vondren's helping us generate a list of key stakeholders. So we're really putting together that process that Bray has laid out for us, which this process, I put on here long-range facility process, but this process could be used for anything. We could utilize this to disaggregate data very similarly that we did today. Mr. Snyder, Director Snyder, has done an excellent job revamping our LCAC with priorities, and I think that's a huge constituent group that's going to help us. We have a survey committee that reaches out to all of our families. We utilize that survey data. It drives what we do. The Esser dollars, as they're rolling out, are directly related to the survey data from our staff and our students and families. One of the things our board president, vice president really pushes to do is have standing meetings. These standing meetings are having a great impact on our community. We have standing meetings with the city, different civic organizations, and we've begun to attend city council meetings, which has been very beneficial for us and has opened up lines of communication between communities and has been absolutely outstanding. So with that being said, that rounds up our presentation. It rounds up what is inside the Davenport plan, and I would engage in any question answering that we have right now.
Director Beck.
That was a very informative summary. Are they going to ask for specific data on things like, just to clarify, when you say majors and minors, you're referring to behavior issues?
Discipline, yeah.
Discipline,
Yep.
okay. Are they going to ask for specific data on any aspects of this?
Yes, so with this, we will provide the usual report that goes along with it, our Gantt chart. They will receive that in that format.
Okay.
This being the last regular school board meeting, before the artifacts have to be turned into the state school board, I wanted to make sure I had the bones and the framework for our school board to see exactly what we were going to be presenting. You've seen the other Gantt chart format before.
Director Hayes.
Thank you for this report also, but turning it in before the deadline, so we'll have some time that they can go over it and get back to us to see if it needs to be tweaked or anything to please.
Okay.
Well, it was very comprehensive. Thank you.
Any other questions? Knocked it out of the park.
Or it's 9 o'clock.
Where does the time go?
Where does it go?
All right. Does that conclude your...
It does conclude my report, and thank you for the feedback.
Thank you. Keep up the great work. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Next discussion item is 11.03. Director Beck.
So we have a number of policies here for our second discussion. Since this is a second discussion, I'm not going to go through each one. I'm going to ask if anyone has questions on any of these. Bring them up now.
Someone was paying.
All right. Well, then we will see these again for a vote at our next regular meeting when they'll come up for a vote. Yep.
November 8th. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Board request. Seeing none. Administrative reports.
None at this time.
All right. Takeaways, Director Hayes.
Well, I had several here. I think one thing that, a couple things that I do want to be sure and mention. The finance report. Kevin, thank you so much for the distinction between the different Essers. I was not really clear on that, but I thank you for that. And with Lisa, slide number 5 in the literacy data. I like the statement, we focus on what we can and cannot control. With that, and with this 95%, I'm hoping by the time that we get another report on it, that we'll see some significant changes in that. With COVID, it did set us back a lot, and you could see that in the numbers, but with everything going now, hopefully by the time we get another report, then we'll see that it's going up, because looking at those numbers, it's just kind of hard to see that we have students in the district with low scores like this. And, you know, I would really like to be effective in helping them get higher. So thank you for everything you're doing. And that was kind of an eye-opener to see those numbers laid out like that.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Director Klein Jerome.
My overall reaction is, wow, there's a lot going on in this district. The youth leadership teams, the literacy data, diving into it at all levels and looking at it. We're not just sitting back. We know we've got a lot to do yet. I'm just amazed how much we are focused on moving ahead.
Thank you, Director Postian.
Two items. The literacy data, I think, there's a lot to digest there. And again, I think it's off to a good start, and hopefully continue. And then the superintendent's report on the Davenport plan report. Again, these two areas are critical to our school district, and so I was glad to see that information.
Thank you, Director Beck.
Yeah, I think actually looking at data, even if it's not data that we are particularly happy with, is so important. And so it's really nice to be making those connections and seeing things come full circle, where we're talking about, or we're asked to fund a program, we're seeing that program implemented, and then we can start looking at the effects objectively that program has on our student achievement. And I think that's something that we have talked about doing for a long time, and we're finally doing that. And I think that's really important. And that's how we make sustainable change. I also really appreciated the presentation at the beginning of the meeting. I know those kind of get swamped out, but the youth leadership teams are really fantastic. I love the fact that we are taking input from our students. They're the ones that are there, and they're the ones, they're why we're here. So listening to them, any way that we can listen to them, I think is really important.
Thank you. Superintendent Schneckloff.
I just want to, while I echo a lot of what everyone said, I want to take a moment to thank Kim Hoffman. entering into that sharing agreement is very difficult for somebody running an entire AEA special ed programming. And to dedicate as much time, if we call her at 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday, she always answers. She's very dedicated, and I think our cabinet would vouch that she is an excellent cabinet member dedicated to the students of Davenport. So we're lucky to have you helping us bridge that gap because you're an excellent leader and you care about the students in Davenport. So thank you for the willingness to join our team, Kim.
I don't even know how to follow up, man. Way to go. I liked all of the discussions here tonight, the presentation, the discussions. I liked the fact that we looked at the data, we realized there was an issue. We got the 95% program to help address those needs of the kids. But not only that, the board was allowed an opportunity to go in a building and see it implemented, because I think that also sends a message to the people in the building that, you know, we are vested in this and we just don't vote on things. And despite what some people think, we actually do put a lot of time and effort into this stuff. And I appreciate every board member going to the schools and volunteering for that. And it was awesome to see a program in place and our staff in action. I thought that was really great. So with that, I will.
Lisa Stevenson all the way right there.
Thank you very much, Lisa. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I thought everybody was wanting to hang out longer. There's been a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
When I put